Hey, this is an update to my Unity ML-Agents Truffle Pig tutorial. If you haven't seen that tutorial yet, I highly recommend you check it out. Otherwise, this is not going to make much sense. So, at the end of that video, I kind of explained that I was still trying to get it working well, and I am not an expert in this yet. I don't think anyone is, and that's completely okay. I made some changes that have improved it quite a bit, and I thought it would help you learn if I went through those changes. There's a couple bug fixes and a couple just general approaches that I've changed. And so in this first video, I'm just going to give a high-level overview of what the issues were and what those changes were. In the next couple videos, I'm going to go a deeper dive into the actual code and how those fixes play out.
I found that when I trained the pigs for a long period of time, as I was observing at the beginning, the pigs seemed to be learning pretty well. And it took a while, so I often would just leave them alone and come back several hours later or even the next day. And one time recently when I tested it, the pigs just kind of learned how to run into a wall and never do anything else. And so they weren't picking up truffles or anything like that. And I thought that that was very strange because they would learn to a point and then all of a sudden just make horrible decisions and never recover from that. And because it took so long to train, it was really difficult to actually realize that this was happening. So I made a couple of observations as I was trying to figure out why aren't these training properly. So first of all, the performance would just do terrible every time the curriculum changed. Curriculum changes every single time. I had it set up originally that we would get more stumps, more truffles, and expand the region that they could be actually spawned in. And I noticed the pigs almost looked confused. As silly as that sounds, they would be doing pretty confident loops around the stump, and then as soon as there were two stumps, they would be like, uh-oh, what do I do now? And they would kind of wiggle back and forth. So that was interesting. And then I noticed also that occasionally pigs would be spawning in the floor and not be able to move. They would just be able to rotate because of the way that the pigs are currently set up. They can only use forces to push, and so they were blocked by being in the floor, though they could still rotate. So I knew that if that was happening, then clearly they're not going to be rewarded or punished properly for their actions. And so they would learn bad behaviors just because being in the floor is not a good testing ground. The last thing was that pigs would sometimes escape their areas. So in the best case, they would just fall into infinity. And in the worst case, they would end up in a neighboring pig pen and they would steal all the truffles so that neither of them would be learning very well. And so I knew I had to fix those second two things first and was hoping it might solve some problems. So first thing I did was fix the spawning issues. Instead of using a check sphere, I'm doing my own logic, which I'll show you later. And I also set it up so that it would reset the agent anytime it went outside the area. So those two things made quite a difference, and I was feeling pretty good about the training until I realized that it still was not quite there. The behavior was all right, but wasn't that great, and still every single time the curriculum would up the difficulty, they would just fail. They would do terrible. Turned out that the ultimate fix was to change the spawn range in the curriculum. So rather than starting small, which I thought would be a good approach, starting big, starting so that they could spawn truffles and stumps all the way to the extents of each area worked way better. I think what was actually happening was the pigs would actually almost use the stumps as guideposts. They would see a stump, and they would learn that if they orbited around it, then they're going to pick up truffles because that's the way it starts at the beginning. Every single time there's a stump and there's a truffle, and as long as they circle around it, then they're going to get points. And even when it increases to two stumps, that kind of works. You can still kind of find a stump and circle around it. But as there are more stumps and more truffles, that method doesn't work as well anymore. So that was the big fix, and the results are quite a bit better now.